When an actor is traveling around the country on a national tour, where do they stay? How do they get from city to city? Where do they get their food? Do they get money for food? If you have ever had any of these questions, stay tuned because I am going to answer them all for you. Hi, my name is Camille. I am currently on my first national tour. I am on the non-union tour of Paw Patrol Live, A Mighty Adventure with Nickelodeon and Cirque du Soleil, and I'm going to answer all of the questions you might have about how national tours work. Now, let's briefly talk about non-union tours. What does that mean? What is a non-union? What is union? The Actors Union is called Actors Equity Association, and if you are in the union, you can only be in productions that are also union productions. A lot of national tours are union tours, so all of the actors on the tour are members of Actors Equity, but there are also many tours where they only have non-union actors in them. There are a couple of differences between going on a union tour and going on a non-union tour because Actors Equity has a lot of rules, and so you might get a couple more perks on those kind of tours, but I'm going to talk about the experiences that I have had on a non-union tour. You might have heard that on union tours, sometimes the actors get the option to take the money that the company would have paid for their hotel and or their travel and find their own way to travel or find their own place to stay. Whether that be staying in an Airbnb or staying in a different hotel, or whether that means driving and traveling the whole tour instead of flying everywhere with the company. So that way you can take your pets or you can travel with your husband or whoever. But that is not the case on non-union tours. On non-union tours, you are traveling with the company and you are staying in the hotel. You do not get the option of a buyout of buying out your travel and or hotel expenses. Now, that being said, if I wanted to stay in a different hotel or somewhere, I am pretty sure I would be allowed to do that. However, I would have to let them know and I would not be getting any money from them. I would just be paying out of pocket for my own place to stay. I'm not 100% sure if I could do that with housing, but I know for a fact that I can do that with travel. So for example, back in November, I went on a vacation during the tour and I didn't miss any shows, any days of work. I just emailed our company manager and just let them know, hey, I'm going on a vacation from this date to this date. So I will be finding my own way to Bloomington, Indiana, which is where we were going, and we were going from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So what I did was I flew from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Mexico, which is where we were having our family vacation. And I stayed there for 3 days. My family was there for a week. And to not miss any work, I only stayed for 3 days. And then I flew from Mexico to Bloomington, Indiana. And I met the rest of the company there. Now, I did not buy out my flight. That is not an option that I get on a non-union tour. I just reached out to them and said, hey, just so you know, I am not using that flight. I'm making my own way there. So I had to pay for my flights there. I didn't get any extra money or get to use any kind of money from that. So that's kind of the difference between a union tour and a non-union tour in terms of buying out those things. You can't buy out on a non-union tour. And another example is we were in Texas for a while. I'm from Texas as well as a few other people from our company. There was one person of the cast that went home and got her car and then drove around the cities in Texas and used her car while we were traveling through Texas. She didn't travel with the company for a couple of cities, probably 4 or 5, but she didn't get a buyout from not going on the flights or not going on the bus. She had to pay for her own gas money to get to the places that we were going, but she got to have the perk of having her own car for a couple cities. So now let's get more in depth on travel days. Yes, so there are 2 kinds of travel days. You can either have a bus travel day or a flight travel day. You might have heard that a lot of non-union tours are only going on the bus. That is not the case for us. We have flown many times and we've also taken the bus many times. And honestly, personally, I like the bus better, but we'll get into why. First of all, let's talk about a bus day. What happens on a bus day? On a bus day, we get 2 big charter buses. At the beginning of the tour, we signed up on which one we wanted to be on. And we also signed up for which row we wanted to sit in. We each get our own row to ourselves. We each get at least 2 seats to ourselves. So much space on both the buses that a lot of people get 2 rows to themselves. There is a quiet bus and a social bus. So you pick which one you want to sign up for. So the quiet bus is just like it sounds, it is quiet. You are not allowed to talk on that bus. So the whole bus ride, you are not allowed to talk to the person next to you. And you are not allowed to get up and walk around the bus and talk to everybody on the bus. And you're also not allowed to take any phone calls or anything like that. And the social bus is the opposite. You are allowed to talk on the phone. You're allowed to talk to everybody. You have the freedom to socialize on that bus. So a lot of people obviously on the bus want quiet and they don't want people talking around them and they just want to sleep. So a lot of people sign up for the quiet bus, and then the people that want the freedom to be able to talk and socialize go on the social bus. As you can probably guess and imagine, the majority of the cast picked the social bus, and mostly crew members are on the quiet bus. That is kind of how it worked. Obviously, a lot of actors are very social. I am on the social bus. Social bus is really great, in my opinion. This is how it's worked for us, at least. Usually the first half of our bus days, nobody talks. We are quiet. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Sometimes at the beginning of a bus day, there's like, two people that kind of talk, but it's usually pretty quiet the first half of the bus ride on the social bus. We are pretty dead silent, which is great. Most people are sleeping and things like that. So it's not like you can't sleep on the social bus. I have slept on the social bus a couple of times. And then usually after we make our lunch stop, then everybody on the social bus is walking back and forth and we're chit-chatting and catching up with everybody that's on the bus. So that is basically how it has worked on our tour on this particular bus of how like the social bus like works. That's kind of like an unspoken rule that like everybody just kind of does. That's like just how we all vibe and like it. So I really enjoy it. It's how bus day works. We have a 30-minute luggage call. So the luggage call will start at, for example, like 8 a.m. and end at 8:30 a.m. And that means we are leaving at 8:30 a.m. If you are late, like you're done. You're getting left or you're getting written up or both. I don't know. Basically, if you're late, if you're still asleep at 8:30 when we're supposed to leave, you're going to have to find your own way to the next city and you're going to have to pay for it yourself. Another thing on like, if you're finding your own way there, like you have to let them know, because if they're expecting you to be on the bus and you're not on the bus, like that's an issue, right? So if you're like, hey, I'm driving, I have my own car, so I'm gonna drive to the next city, like you need to let them know that so they're not like looking for you. So you can load your luggage onto the bus like anytime between like 7:30 and 8. So you load your luggage on and then you get on the bus and we take off. Then we will usually make a like little quick stop before our lunch stop, like a 15-minute bathroom break or like snack stop, like at a gas station usually. And then we will get back on and keep going. And then we always have an hour-long lunch stop. So we will stop somewhere, we will get off. We will usually stop somewhere like a mall or somewhere that has a bunch of food options nearby. So we all get off and walk to the place that we want to eat. And then we have to be back on the bus an hour later. And then we all leave. And then we just keep going until we make it to the next place we're going, to the hotel. That is basically how a bus day works. It is very easy. It's simple. A lot of people like the bus days because it just is a lot easier than a flight day sometimes. And we don't travel like so far that it's like, get me off this bus. Like the bus rides are usually not longer than like 6 hours, 7 hours. Now let's talk about flight days. Flight days are slightly inconvenient because you are checked in as a group. It's a group reservation. You cannot check in advance for most of the airlines. You have to like check in once you get there all together. And you have to like check your bags all together. So basically like we all have to kind of be in a group. So the overview of how it works is we still get on a charter bus going to the airport, but instead of getting on 2 charter buses, we all get on to 1 charter bus. So for this, like the ride to the airport and from the airport to the hotel, we are usually sitting next to somebody. We don't have our own row, but it's usually like a 10 to like, I think max 45 minute drive to the airport, depending on where the hotel is in regards to the airport. Then you drive to the airport, you unload your luggage, and then we all go to the check-in counter to check our bags. So basically how this works is our company manager will go to the front, get all of our tickets, and then they will call us up in whatever order is best for the gate agents. And it kind of depends on which airline we're flying and which way they like to do it. But sometimes they will call us up in alphabetical order, or sometimes it's just the whatever line we get in, but it really just depends. Sometimes ideally they will have 2 gate agents checking us in, so we'll have like 2 lines. We will check our bags, and if they're under 50 pounds, then our company manager will swipe the credit card and pay for our bags. That's basically why we have to be all together on a flight day, because the company manager has to pay for our bags. And then once we get our bags checked, we go through security on our own, and we are on our own, free to do kind of whatever we want, as long as like we get on the flight, obviously. Hi, I'm editing, and I just want to add that we give the company managers all of our numbers for every airline, so that way we still get points for all of the flights. And we also give them our known travelers numbers, so that way if you have TSA pre-check, you get TSA pre-check on your tickets, so that way you can go through that line instead of the general security line. Forgot to mention that, and I feel like that's kind of an important detail. So then, we get on the flight, and then when we get off the flight, we all have to get our bags from baggage claim, and then we all get onto a bus again. So as you can see, we have to load all of our stuff on and off a bus twice on the flight days. So sometimes it's kind of easier to just stay on that bus. And on flight days, if anyone's bags are lost, we also have to wait for them to get that sorted and try to find their bags. But nobody has ever permanently lost their bags. But it has happened once where 5 people's bags weren't there and they got them the next day. So that is basically how a flight day works. How many bags can you take on tour? That would be a big question that I would have, because baby, I want to bring as much stuff as I can, okay? I love to overpack, and I'm 9 months on the road. Sounds insane. Can I bring all my stuff? We get 2 checked bags that the company pays for. So they have to be under 50 pounds, or you have to pay the overweight fee, but the company will pay for both your checked bags. And in addition to that, you also get a personal item and a carry-on. So that means 2 giant suitcases, 1 regular size suitcase, and a giant backpack in my case. That is how the bags work. Also, bus days are easier because we don't have to worry about how heavy the bag is. It really doesn't matter. You just shove all your stuff in the bags. It's way easier to pack for bus days than flight days. Now, hold up. I know you might be wondering, okay, that explains getting from city to city, but how do you get from where you're from to the first city? And how do you get home once your contract is done? Do you have to pay for that? No. The answer is no, you do not. I'll talk really briefly about how that works. On the way to Las Vegas, where we rehearse for this show, I check in for my flight by myself. It's a lot easier because it's not booked under a group reservation. I can check in the night before. I show up, I check my bags, and for that, because the company manager is not there to pay for the bags, I just send a picture of the receipt to the company manager, and then it gets reimbursed in my next paycheck. That is how the paying of bags works when you are flying there by yourself. And that's basically it. And then usually we are given an Uber voucher to get from the airport to the hotel that we are staying in. We don't get an Uber voucher to get from our house to the airport the first time that we are going on to tour. And we had a 1-week holiday break on this tour as well. And my flight back home for the break and my flight from home back to the tour was paid for by the company as well. And my flight going home once this tour is over will also be paid for by the company. That is the gist of how that all works. Now we have covered travel days. Now let's move on to actually being in the city, if it's a driving city or a walking city. I always wondered about this too before I went on a tour. How do you get to the theater? How do you get groceries? How do you go places you want to go? So if the theater is under a mile walk from the hotel, then it's a walking city. I think it's a mile. It honestly might be less than half a mile. It's usually less than half a mile away. So if the hotel is in close proximity to the theater, it will be a walking city. And if the hotel is not close to the venue, or if it's just not a walking city, it's a city you have to drive in, then we will have cars. Basically, all you need to know with the walking city is the theater is usually pretty close. It's usually in a city area, so you can just walk a couple of blocks and you will find the theater. How far the theater is really just depends. One time we literally stayed right across the street from the theater, so all we had to do was just walk across the street. It took 2 minutes to get there from when I left the hotel. But there have been other venues where it's been a 15-minute walk and not as fun when it's cold outside. If it's more than a 15-minute walk, it's gonna be a driving city. So how does that work? If it's a driving city, we get rental cars. You have an assigned car with your people. There are 2 vans for the cast. We have 13 people in the cast, so we're split up into 2 vans. And then the crew also gets different cars, and same with management and things like that. So we get 2 vans, and there are a couple of people that are approved drivers. So before we went on the tour, we had to go through a little background check of our driving history. Either got approved to drive by the company or not approved. And you also do not have to drive if you do not want to. So if you want to volunteer to be a driver, you can, and then we are just rotated based on each car. So I am an approved driver. So how that works basically is if I am assigned to be the driver, majority of the time the cars are dropped off at the hotel and I just have to pick up the key from the company manager or the assistant company manager. Basically, my only job as the driver is to take everybody to and from work and take everybody on a grocery run. And also I have to fill the car back up with gas to where it was. And then I'm also reimbursed for the gas. And in addition, every week that you're assigned to be a driver, you get like a little bit of extra money in your paycheck. Not a ton, but just like a little bit more for like driving everybody. When we have driving cities, it is nice because we can drive places if we need to. We don't have to take an Uber depending on, how far it is, but it is nice. If you need to run an errand or something like that, it's really great to do during a driving city. If you're in a walking city and you need to go somewhere, you've got to take an Uber, really, if it's really far away. Right now we are in Baltimore, Maryland, and this is a walking city. I have heard that the venue is pretty close to the hotel. It's not a far walk at all. I haven't been yet though, but I will tomorrow. We have work tomorrow. We have 2 shows. Yes. It's also happened a few times where several of us have gone to a workout class and we have Ubered there. Times it was a driving city and we got approved to take the van to drive to the workout class. And one of the times it was walking cities, so we all Ubered together. And that covers driving versus walking cities. Now, finally, let's talk about hotels and food and all of that. We are always staying in a hotel. Like I said, no like Airbnbs or anything like that. We're always in a hotel. You do have a roommate on a non-union tour. Now that being said, with a roommate, sometimes you might get lucky if there's not an even number and you might be the odd person out where you get your own room for a little while. It worked out like that for me for a couple weeks. I got to have my own room, and it's happened for another cast member who got their own room for a couple of weeks, and it's never really like a consistent thing. And if you are by yourself, you are like the floater person. So if anyone new comes in, you'll probably be put with them. Or if you are like the floater person who doesn't have a roommate, you could be put with somebody at any time. Pretty standard hotels, you always have 2 queen beds. Usually there's a mini fridge and a microwave, almost always. Sometimes there's not. Last city, I didn't have a microwave. My room didn't, but other people's did. And I was like, what is up with that? Why do you hate me, hotel? And the same thing happened in the other hotel in Virginia. Both times I've been in Virginia so far, I've been skimped on a microwave, but it's okay. If there's not a microwave in your room, there is usually one in the lobby. And if there is an ancient microwave in your room, like there is in this hotel, there's usually one in the lobby as well that is newer. Or there might be one in our hospitality room. And speaking of which, a hospitality room we will usually get depending on the hotel. And that basically just means we get like a conference room that is ours to use if we like need an extra room. Like sometimes we've had like little events in there. Had a gingerbread house competition in one of our hospitality rooms, and occasionally if we can't rehearse at the theater, we will have a rehearsal in the hospitality room. And it's just a room that's like kind of a neutral space that you are free to use while you're staying at the hotel. And sometimes if there's not a conference room available, sometimes it will be like a separate hotel room that is the hospitality room, and you're like not allowed to sleep in there obviously, but it'll just be like a neutral room that you're allowed to hang out in during the day. On our very first hotel that we stayed in Vegas while we were rehearsing, we had a full kitchen because we were staying there for a full month. Now, since then, have we ever had a full kitchen? No. Sometimes you'll get lucky and we'll have like a half fridge, or you will have a sink, but usually not a stove, never an oven, and never a full fridge, except for that first city we had a full fridge and a freezer. Sometimes in those mini fridges, there's like a tiny little freezer space. But yeah, just so you know, little life hack, you can buy frozen meals and put them in the fridge. They do last for several days there. Let's talk about food. We do get a per diem for food included in our paychecks every week. So that is really great because the way that you have to eat is really expensive because you're never somewhere long-term, you don't have a kitchen. So you have to DoorDash a lot or get Uber Eats a lot, unfortunately, depending on like the city. Or if it's a walking city, there's lots of food options nearby. You can go and like walk somewhere and get food from there. And a lot of the times, like I said, in a driving city, we'll always go to a grocery store and buy food there. And sometimes in the walking cities, you can find a grocery store or something like that and buy food to kind of stock up for the week that we're there. Now, obviously, like you can't buy a ton of food that fits in a mini fridge, and everything that you buy has to be microwavable basically, which is unfortunate because it's so hard to eat healthy on a tour. But if you're like our performance director and you want to make room for an air fryer in your bag, you can do that. It is hard, and you got to be strategic about buying food that will last you the week, but not buying like too much food that you're gonna waste any, and also like buying food that you'll actually eat and that will fit in the fridge. And that is all of the basic logistics of going on a national tour. If you want to see what it's like to film a callback while you're on tour, go check out my last video. I posted a vlog of me filming a callback in the hotel room. Kind of crazy. If I left anything out in this video and you have any more burning questions about what it's like to be an actor on a national tour, please comment them down below and I will read them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.